Welcome to Turtle Island Voices, originating in the Treaty 8 territory of British Columbia, created by Kelly Smith and hosted by Tansy Friendship Center Society. We asked 6 people to share their journey. We heard different voices, similar views, and saw experiences through a different lens. Laurelle Watson is the Executive Director of the Tansy Friendship Center here in Chetwynd. She's married to an Indigenous man from First Nations, and we asked if she would share the view from her lens. Thank you for being here, Laurelle.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I feel really honored to be asked to join in on this. So just listening to Kelly's vision right off the start was really exciting, and being able to come up with some funding to help out and having everybody jump on board and be excited. It's a really awesome experience. So I'm really honored to be asked.
Thanks, Laurelle. So I'm gonna jump right into some of the questions.
Okay.
You may have already answered this. Why have you agreed to be interviewed?
Because this is an exciting experience. I think this is something that Tansy is growing. We want to be involved in more things like this, and just getting more information out to people who aren't familiar with what's happening in the world or what has happened in the world in the past. It's nice to hear real experiences from people. So being a part of this, I know I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Thanks, Laurelle. We've been asking people about, and you've already touched on it, why is it important that Indigenous people share their journeys? So you have a bit of a different perspective as the Executive Director of a Friendship Center. So can you shed some light on that?
On why it's important? In school, which is where we do a lot of our learning, we're not taught the true history of Canada. Having everybody, especially the Indigenous people, share their experiences, it opens everybody's eyes. And just over the past year, it's just been so overwhelming with the amount of people who really didn't understand the actual history of Canada. So having Indigenous people share their stories and their experiences, and it's really important for other people to understand. And we're never going to get everybody to understand or even believe. There's still people who don't believe these things happen. So it's really important to keep spreading the word and spreading the truth.
I agree. I know you had mentioned to me that just in your role at Tansy there, that it's not just Caucasian Canada that is waking up to the reality of Canada's past within their treatment of Indigenous people. But you'd also mentioned that Indigenous people are coming into the center, and now all the things that they've said all these years is being validated, and it's re-traumatizing them
because they're
finally being recognized as.
Yeah, they've been told for so many years, they've been shunned, and they've been told, well, there's no way that happened, and you must be telling these lies. And if that happened, then things would have been done, and the government would have done this, and the police would have done that. But now the truth is coming out, and they're having to bring up all these feelings that they shoved down for so long and learn how to deal with, and said, okay, I'm good with people not understanding and not believing. Well, not good, but now it's all coming to light. One of our elders, when we had our walk last spring, she got up and spoke, and some of the things she spoke about, she hadn't spoke about since she was a child. So watching her kind of come forth and starting to open up, and it's like that hole is opening back up, and we're not trying to plug that back up. We're wanting that to come out, and we're wanting her to share that, but then also having the people in our organization that can help and deal with those feelings and those thoughts that are coming back. So it's just so important, this conversation that's happening.
Yeah. Thank you. And would you say that Canada is prepared? Do we have a safety net to help these people as they're coming out? And
no.
How prepared?
There's no safety net. It's up to us as Indigenous organizations to make sure we have the people in place to counsel and to be there and to listen. And especially with our elders, if we can get some of our elders who can come in and have some of those counseling skills and sit with them, even one-on-one in group sessions, anything, sit and have a coffee with with some of the people who are coming forward. There's no safety net. Canada doesn't have they don't have a safety net. It's the bands and the friendship centers and organizations like that are becoming that safety net.
You've created a place where everybody can have that voice, and you have an amazing team that you work with. And the work that you're doing is creating that sacred space.
And the one thing I'm noticing too with these conversations and having the elders opening up and sharing their stories more is I actually ran into a young man last night who was telling me these wonderful stories that have been passed down through his family. And that's been buried. Nobody's been able to really talk about it. They were looked at, they were a little bit crazy, or these are made up stories. But he just told me this wonderful, engaging story. And he's about my daughter's age. He's 22 years old, and he's talking about pipe carriers and how the peace pipe came to be. And he's telling these stories, and I'm completely engaged. And I'm thinking, this never would have happened 15 years ago. But now that all of the conversation is happening, these youth are coming back and sharing this stuff with their friends and with their families. I was just engrossed with him for about an hour.
I read a quote once that every time elder passes, a library burns to the ground.
Yeah. One of the reasons why we set it up like this is because we want to hear from people. We know now is a crucial time in history, given the findings in Kamloops. We know that the general public is more willing to listen now. And this platform is organic. So we're hearing a lot of shared stories. And saying that, Laurelle, I just want to ask a little bit about your background. Did you see yourself marrying an Indigenous man when you were young?
Jonathan and I started dating when I was 14 years old. So yes.
Wow.
So yes, I did. Yeah. And to say our relationship has been rocky is putting it very mildly. But I think that's why I'm so engaged in this whole conversation, is because I'm now in the last couple of years just understanding where his emotions are coming from. Because he was never, like, he had no religion, no culture, none of that. He was brought up in town, not very close with his mother. His mother was raised by somebody who went through residential schools. And I think I'm just now realizing this is why he does the things that he does and runs away from conflict and his emotions and tries to just bury it because that's what he was taught. But yes, going back to the question, yes, I did see myself marrying Indigenous. We, like I said, started dating at 14. We had 2 children right out of high school, our 2 boys, and got married right away. And it's been a wonderful, exciting experience. Yeah, it's good.
How was your family, Laurelle?
My family?
Yeah.
In what sense?
We had discussed in other podcasts between the hosts that I was raised in a racist home. It's not that we talked about being racist or identified as racist. Growing through the years, I realize now that we were, and most of the people that I grew up with were as well. Looking back, was there racism in your family?
I come from a huge family. So there's 9 children on my mother's side and 16 on my father's. I wouldn't say that my family was racist. I would say that they were misinformed, that they were educated incorrectly. There definitely is some racism in my family farther back through some of my aunts and uncles. Ivan and I are actually related. I'm sure he's experienced the same people that I've experienced in our family that need some education. And I'm hoping that in the last couple of years, they've been getting it. I've been very vocal with my family, especially my close family. And if we start to debate, we'll debate for a while. And I'll just say, you know what? I really am not comfortable having this conversation with you. We're on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and I appreciate your views, but we're going to stop having this conversation. And I've saved a few of my relationships that way. And that's the way I describe it, is that they're just misinformed. When you're taught through your family and through history and through school that things are one way, they're not that way. Like, it's hard to break away from that stuff. So like I said, I wouldn't say they were racist, but I would say that they need some more education. Yeah, definitely.
I think that's most of Canada.
Yeah. Yes.
We can throw the nasty R word around quite a lot, but at the end of the day, it is about education. right?
And miseducated is the word I want to say. You're miseducated. Yeah. The government comes up with the plan for your education system, and that's what you're taught. It doesn't matter if it's the truth or if it's not the truth. That's what you're going to be taught. And if you have people who you look up to who are teaching you these things, you're going to believe those are the truths.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I know in the 70s, our education system didn't even include Canadian Indigenous people. We learned about American Indigenous people. Like that's how buried our history was.
Yeah. We have somebody in our family now who's come over from Britain, and he was shocked when he got here that there were actually Indigenous people still alive here. He thought that they were extinct and they were no more. Wow. And he still says that once in a while. And this is what people are taught in European cultures and countries. So it's unfortunate.
We can't just turn around 150 years of how things have been done, but we can certainly start on it one person at a time, getting the word out.
Just keep moving forward. Yeah. Into the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
With you being the executive director, what are some of the things that you're doing proactively to see that there's some changes and some awareness that is being made in order to educate the community?
The Friendship Centers are known or have been known to be Indigenous only organizations. So what we're doing here in our own town is we're going along the lines of inclusion. So we're inviting all different kinds of people to come in and to sit and to have our community lunches together and to come to our workshops. And we're going to teach some beading. Everybody is invited. You don't have to be Indigenous. Come in. That's where the conversations start. That's where it all starts, and understanding each other. So we've opened up our programming to everybody in our community.
Hey, listeners, this is your host, Kelly Smith. If you're interested in joining an advisory committee that provides constructive criticism, feedback, and ideas for the content of Turtle Island Voices, we'd love to hear from you. Visit us at turtleislandvoices.ca/advise to learn more. Sandra, did you have something there? You were reaching for your mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to go back to when you were talking about your husband and how you understand him now. And some of those coping skills and the survival skills that he was using. I think a lot of our young Indigenous men use those. And I want to commend you on recognizing those characteristics, because a lot of people don't.
Yeah. I'm very empathetic, so I do understand both sides of everything all the time. I don't know if that's a hindrance or a good thing when you're an executive director, but it's like Jonathan and I have been through a lot. And if I wish that I had understood that at the beginning, because I feel that our relationship wouldn't have been as rocky. Like, just for instance, I didn't even know he had a mother that was alive until I was pregnant with our first child. That's how distanced he was from his own cultures and his own reserve. And it was really shocking. And then to see how she is and how hear stories about John's grandmother and the way they were raised, and it just puts things into perspective. And then I don't know why it took me the last couple of years to finally dig a little farther, but I think with everybody's digging a little deeper now.
Thank you. All in time, right?
Yes. Everything happens for a reason, and everything happens when it should.
Yeah.
That's the way I view things.
Yeah. We've had this conversation too, where you can't drag people kicking and screaming to where you're at your level of awareness. All you can do is just keep educating and keep talking and keep having these conversations. So, Laurelle, what are some of the leadership qualities of someone who'd like to share the Indigenous worldview?
Being empathetic is one of the big ones, right? Being empathetic, being understanding, and just listening to people, listening to your community. For me, I think the biggest thing is I've been down the path of addiction, and a lot of our clients, they open up a lot more when they understand that you've been down that path. So I've been down that path. And so if we have somebody who comes in who's looking for a place at the shelter, and I can sit and have a conversation with them, and I actually understand and really understand what they're going through. And I'm open and honest. And I say, you know what? I've been there. I've done that. There's people in the shelter right now that I used to hang out with on a daily basis who we used to use drugs together and we used to party together. And for them to see me doing what I'm doing gives them a little bit of inspiration and hope that, you know what, I can get there too. So I think that anybody who takes on a position like this needs to be able to understand the clients they're working with and their community that they're working in. You can't pull somebody from the outside and put them in a position like this. It doesn't work.
Especially in a smaller town.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you see as, in terms of cultural awareness and having these conversations, what's an uphill battle that we're facing?
Right now, I think there's such separation in our communities right now, and it's always going to be like that with our government. They divide and conquer. That's been the way of the world since day one. So just really working on that inclusion piece. That's really important, is share our culture. I know we call all of our elders and people who know the stories, we call them knowledge keepers. I like to call them knowledge sharers, because that's what they need to be. They need to get out there and they need to share what they know. So like you said, if they pass on, that's not another library. You've shared that with everybody. So
Yeah.
So what does cultural and historical awareness look like 5 years down the road?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Historically, I think as a friendship center and as bands, I think we need to really push the education system to teach the truth. I know we've had discussions on that before where they've said, yeah, youth don't understand, and youth, that's too hard for them to understand. It's too much for them. But I think the earlier you teach the truth, the better. And having that the education needs to be truthful. That's the biggest part. Like, it's just watching how that miseducation has made everything else happen in the world, and the disagreements and the racism and all of that stuff. Definitely education is key, and having the truth taught in the schools is number one for that.
Are we getting close to that? Is that something we can hope to see? And
I think in 5 years, yeah, definitely. I think maybe in the high schools, yes, in 5 years. Elementary schools, maybe it might be a little farther off, but the way they're going with the preschools and the daycares and bringing in the Aboriginal content and stuff right now, I don't think it's too far off. I really don't. They're really pushing a lot of Aboriginal context, especially in our community. But I think that's coming from our own community. That's the bigger centers that we need to push a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of our guests had said, because one of our questions was, have you always been proud to be Indigenous? And consistently, the answer is, yeah, until I went to school.
Yeah.
Our schools, the breeding grounds, right? For racism, to have this thing just keep turning and repeating itself, rinse and repeat. So it makes the most sense that maybe we ought to put our focus, besides these conversations that we're having here, but put our focus on the school system. Let's get this in the school system taught as just part of our regular curriculum. Canada's got an ugly history. We need to look at it.
It is an ugly history, but you can't teach mistruth. You have to teach truth.
Yeah.
You have to. I don't understand the concept of not teaching the truth. So maybe that's just how I was raised.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the teaching lies it's not fair. It's not fair to the youth.
Yeah.
Because then they have to try to relearn things when they get older. And we all know how hard it is to learn new things.
Yeah, exactly. I should have paid more attention to math in my case, because I'm not going back to learn it now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
That's what calculators are for.
Mm-hmm.
Sandra, did you want to jump in? You have another question?
I think the idea of sitting on the school board over there would be a great idea for the Friendship Center. It would be nice, as you were talking and talking about the older kids getting some education. I thought about those little kids who went to residential school who didn't have a choice. And push comes to shove, and our federal government, who also oversees the education system, are they going to allow that? But it is just looking at what was normal back then to expose young people to what's it going to be like now. I'd love to see more of this stuff in the schools. And we did some cultural competency stuff when I was with FNHA, and we did something specific to that area in the Northeast. And if you ever want to hear more about it, just reach out and I can connect you to somebody who can possibly get you that information. But I think education is key. And I thank you for that. I thank you for voicing that, because while we're doing our part here, having these conversations, these organic conversations, those behind the scenes people like Laurelle who are working with I guess we want to say the school officials, the city officials in and around that area, and the chief and councils in that area to bring awareness. Good job. I just want to commend you again. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do actually have one of our staff members who's Indigenous who does sit on our school board and does go to those advisory committees. Yeah, we'll definitely be pushing a little harder. I know Leslie Barley from the BC Aboriginal Friendship Center. She is really pushing these things, and we're all going to get behind her and try our best to start teaching the truth.
I think there's no stopping it now. Like, it's the momentum is there, and the people that need to be on board are on board, and those that aren't will be soon enough.
Yeah.
So, Laurelle, speaking of truth and reconciliation, this is a question that we ask all of our guests. What is something that everybody might be thinking, but nobody is saying about truth and reconciliation?
Honestly, I don't know, because we have all of these conversations all the time in here. That's a tough one. That's a really tough question, because we do talk, like Ivan has witnessed, and Kelly, you've seen, we do have our conversations where we all sit down in the morning and talk about all the things that have gone on over the weekend or stuff that's come up with our clients. So there's not a lot we don't talk about. I guess I need to get out in the community a little bit more and see what they're not talking about, so I can start talking about it with them, or some of our staff can. Yeah, I don't know. That is a really tough one.
Do you think truth and reconciliation is rolled out the way that everybody expected it to be?
I don't think it's rolled out enough. I don't think it's, like I said, that education piece is missing. They haven't changed much. So, and like when you're done school, it's mistruth that you've been guided on. So I don't think it's done. I think there's definitely more in-depth conversations that need to happen. And there's a lot more that the government needs to do, but that's a tough one. That's a tough push. The people who created the residential schools also created our current education system. So you need to think about that one for a little while.
Well, and I think Sandra really hit the nail on the head there. Right now, they're saying that, geez, the elementary schools might be a little young to have this kind of information. But yet these Indigenous children were torn away from their families and murdered and buried in the back of fields and in schoolyards. They weren't too young. You know what I mean?
Experienced it.
Exactly.
They experienced it. They didn't just have to learn about it. They experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's just a distraction to say that that's not the kind of thing that we can teach in elementary schools. Sorry, that's just not Canadian.
Sorry.
Thanks, Laurelle. Have you got anything else for our listeners? A parting message?
I think my parting message would be, go out and have those honest conversations with people who you might think might be a hard conversation to have them with. Like I said before, I've got family members who are very miseducated. Is that the word I'm using? And I've had a few really tough conversations with them, and it's actually built our bond stronger to have those conversations. So that's my word of advice leaving here today, is go out and have the hard conversations, because that's where everything good starts.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Laurelle.
Thank you, Laurelle, for being yourself and just being truthful and being a voice of reason and understanding, and being that bridge, and continue to be yourself in the way the Creator is guiding you in. It's a good way.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Turtle Island Voices. For those of you who may be triggered by the information shared, please call the toll-free First Nations and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline. at 1-855-242-3310 or the Metis Crisis Line at 1-833-638-4722. You can find us at turtleislandvoices.ca, where our show notes provide more information from each episode. Please follow us on social media.